proposed and when the budget is adopted. So we'll see that as we move forward. So again, point of information, and I really do hope, and somewhat contrary to Mr. Casey, but I certainly hope that our students and residents who are here actually stay and spend some time tonight and listen to what's being proposed in the budget, because what's being proposed, it will impact certainly not only the students here, but students otherwise, and students come within the system, and it's an opportunity to really get a first-hand glimpse of what we're looking to do for the next, quite frankly, several years in terms of budget and construction as well. So it should be a good, interesting presentation that, quite frankly, won't take more than a basketball game will run. So if you could stand to be in a basketball game or a swim meet or whatever it might be, I'm sure you could stay the 45 minutes to be here and present and listen to the budget presentation as well. I would like to ask Mrs. Carmen to come forward. And as Mrs. Carmen comes forward, I'm sure she has some comments, but I just want to offer my personal thanks to the CAP teens, a group of young people who I think did a wonderful, wonderful job of creating a community forum to address a critical issue, not only in the Shen community, but communities across the country, the issue of heroin epidemic, addiction. That's such a huge epidemic across, and we see it. We have classmates, we have friends, we have families that are impacted right here in our own community, and I'm so pleased that our young people took it upon themselves to say, you know what, we need to figure out how do we try to help each other. And that's part of what they're here tonight, and I'm sure Mrs. Carmen will reiterate some of those comments as a part of our introduction as well.
Thank you. If the CAP teens and Michelle Smallwood, if you would please come up, that would be great. As the CAP teens are coming up, just let me talk a little bit about, Dr. Robinson started to do a little bit of an introduction, but let me tell you what what is.
Some on this side.
You guys can come over here too.
Span the whole arena.
What is CAP Teens? CAP Teens is a community-based, year-round youth leadership program that is comprised of over 100 Shenendehowa High School student members. CAP Teens are shining stars in our school and community, and they serve as youth ambassadors for Captain Youth and Family Services, our nonprofit agency that has served the community for over 35 years. The CAP Teens program is committed to the youth leadership, development, philanthropy, community and service and personal and social, I should have brought my glasses, social growth opportunities, focusing on character education and development. Students develop leadership skills through trainings, leadership opportunities, and participation in the CAP Teens Leadership Council, and they engage in rewarding service projects in both their school and community as the ambassadors for Captain. The mission of CAP Teens is to be the change you wish to see in the world, to help and hope, and to uplift and empower youth and families in our community. What do the CAP Teens do? CAP Teens are incoming 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students. Excellent candidates are enthusiastic, motivated, open-minded, compassionate, dedicated, reliable, and trusted by other students. CAP Teens are active, well-rounded students or current leaders within the school and community. They are open to learning how to develop leadership skills, and most importantly, they are passionate about helping others. As shining stars, CAP Teens engage in a wide variety of school and community service projects throughout the year, including but not limited to staffing the Teen Talk and Are You OK hotlines, tutoring children at Cheryl's Lodge Outreach Center, helping local families through food and toy drives, working with senior citizens or service dogs, participating in community events like Winterfest, conducting fundraisers like our annual Haunted Hayride, or partnering with local organizations to offer community education events or projects like Random Acts of Kindness Initiative, and so much more. CAP Teens commit to volunteering their time across a wide range of rewarding opportunities, attend monthly membership meetings or bi-weekly leadership meetings, participate in trainings, and attend our annual summer leadership retreat. There's a lot there. CAP Teens inspire others toward positive change. They recognize the call to service, and they have the heart of a leader with the spirit of volunteerism. And without you guys, there's a lot of different, as you guys hear, different initiatives that you guys do in our community, and without you, they wouldn't happen. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for your work with the heroin talks also.
Do we have a student spokesperson?
Oh.
Representing CAP Teens.
Go ahead.
You can do it. I don't know what.
Talk about the form a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I don't know if any of you were there or heard about it, but you're all there, heard about it. So it was a community talk about heroin, and we had people from, we had two recovering heroin addicts, a person from a deputy who came and talked about the drug itself, and then a woman who lost her son to heroin. And it was actually really successful. We had a really good turnout, and people really got into it. And I don't know if anyone else, but I didn't really expect so many people, like people were raising their hands and telling their own stories, and it was really moving. And it was such a great thing to be a part of. And the person I interviewed was a sweetheart, and she's just very inspirational. Her story is amazing to hear, so thanks. You want to speak, Krishna?
It was just the CAP teens. They were Captain, on behalf of Captain Youth and Family Services. We're also very proud of you guys for all the work that you do in the school and community. And it's really true that you guys do have a heart of a leader and the spirit of volunteerism. And it takes a lot for youth to really appreciate the needs of their community and their fellow peers, and really want to make a difference. And so it's just, we thank you also for all that you guys do. We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say on behalf of the board, an issue sometimes we look at, who provides, and we always think of what we're doing here is so important for the students, and it is. But this is a community, and this is a community issue. If there's any single issue in this community, and not just in Clifton Park and in our district, but almost every Sunday in the Times Union or in the Gazette, there are articles about the impact on families and decision-making, bad decision-making in many cases. And seeing something like this and seeing teens come together and work on it gives us hope. I mean, because there are a lot of people, if you talk to some older folks, they think it's hopeless, that they're reading these stories and they're just, what's happening? It wasn't like this when, they go back to that. But we can say, no, here's the other side of the story. Here's what's happening. So just on behalf of the board, thank you to Captain, who we all know, and the great service they provide. But we know that it's more than Captain leaders providing things. It's the teams that are involved in saying, this is an important issue, and we're going to deal with it up front, out front. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
So you guys can come through this.
Great job.
Perfect time.
Betters my understanding of what they do. Good stuff. They're really our army.
Again, thank you very much, Mrs. Carmen, and thank you very much, our CAP team students. We'll continue with the recognition. As you look around, certainly for the board, and the board members have been kept informed of the triumphs and challenges of athletics over the past winter, but fortunately for us, it's been more triumphs than challenges. Hence the reason why we have a large number of young people here tonight to represent their respective teams. And I would like to ask Mr. Colin to come forward and offer some comments as well. And I'm sure one of the comments that he mentioned, and something just to kind of preempt the conversation a little bit, is that when we think about opportunities for students, we're not necessarily thinking about, okay, this child or this young person is an athlete versus something else. We think about what all the different things that make a complete experience for a young person. And I say that because many of our young people who are here tonight, not only are they being recognized now, not only are they great athletes, they're great students, they're great musicians, they're great community servants. And I think that's what makes this community great, because we do try to endorse and enforce that and uphold that, and tonight recognize that in our young people as well. So, Mr. Coleman, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Robinson. and I'll be brief with some opening remarks. Just tonight, we'd like to thank the Board of Education and the superintendent for allowing us the opportunity to showcase our winter athletes. I would really like to thank our boosters and our parents. About 4 or 5 years ago, I meet the end of each year with the entire coaching staff for the department. And sometimes we do some things on vision, sometimes we do some things on operation, and we do some different sorts of presentations with the coaches. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was meeting with Rob Weeks and Ryan Fenton in my office, and I said, we really need to come up with something. We need to just push our program to the next level. And we talked about the idea that we would go and we would chase every good opponent that we could find all across New York State and all around the East Coast. And we set that as a goal for our coaches. And I think with the support of our parents and with our booster clubs and with the support we get from the board and certainly Dr. Robinson, we're able to do that. When I was putting this together and I look at the places that these teams have been to New York City to play teams that were state champions, the boys basketball team going to Elmira to play Pennsylvania's defending state champion, Vermont state champion, where the track team runs, where our swimming team runs. Coach Weeks with the wrestling team will go anywhere on the East Coast to wrestle the best competition. That's what's getting us here today, where these athletes present themselves so well when it comes time for our own sectional and state championships. So I would like to just thank the parents and the boosters for helping us be able to do that. The first person I'm going to be calling up and athletes, they're individual champions in their sport. The team finished second. It's our swimming and diving team. It's our boys swimming and diving team. We had 3 individual champions. We had Luke Gordon in the breaststroke, Joey Holman in the backstroke, and we had Nick Leiden in diving. We're also going to have Coach Dunham come up this year. I know Coach Dunham is no stranger to being here. He's here every single season that we do this. Coach Dunham won his 100th, had his 100th win this year. And just to put his record into perspective, so you know how successful our boys swimming and diving program is, he won his 100th win at the end of the season. His overall record is 107-3. So he's had a fairly good record of undefeated seasons in there. He's won, I think, 8 or 9 sectional championships, and I know we were talking, he'll certainly be back up here with his full team over the next couple of years. But Chuck, I know you want to bring your boys up. Come on up, Luke, Nick, and Joey, come on up.
Thank you for including us. Shaker decided to extend their lease and rent out the sectional title for 1 more year. So hopefully we'll bring that back home next season. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Mr. Coleman and Dr. Robinson for recognizing my 100th win. I didn't really know what was going on at the time during the swimming when it happened, but I greatly appreciate that. And we've been able to get there as a program because of their continued support and the support of not only our administration, but our community as a whole, our families, and obviously most important with the talented swimmers and divers that we've been able to have. Just a quick run through of what they were able to accomplish this year. Nick was the Section 2 champion in diving, broke the school record for both 6 and 11 dive meet, and teamed up with one of his fellow teammates to, for the first time ever, have 2 divers finish at the top 10 in the state meet. As a sophomore, that's a tremendous accomplishment. So we're greatly looking forward to many more years of him on the board. Joey had 2 top 10 finishes, and outside of Ryan Gordon, put up the fastest 100 backstroke time that anybody's ever put up in Shenendehowa history. And then Luke Gordon was voted Section 2 most outstanding competitor, was a champion in multiple events, a Section 2 record holder in multiple events, and is hopefully going to finish as an All-American once that all comes out at the end of this year. And when we talk about student athletes, one of my proudest moments of my 10 years as the head coach was watching a local sports show where they had Luke in to interview, and I was blown away at what a great job he did, just being so articulate and representing his team and his school and his community. And it was really, I think, the exact representation that we strive for student athletes. And he was a wonderful leader and captain, and for me to be able to see that every day for the past 5 years has been great. And for us to have him and his brother go through our program has been tremendous. And all these guys were great leaders, and we had a great team, and we hope to be up here again next year. Thank you.
I'll go down through these in the order, just that they kind of won the championships in. The next team is our Nordic ski program under the direction of first-year head coach John Sauls. I know a lot of coaches have tough jobs, but it would be the equivalent of like not having a gym for the entire year, not having a pool. You know, having a Nordic ski team without snow presents some serious challenges, living in the Northeast. John would send me emails on Saturday and Sunday nights and saying, hey, I heard they're making snow up in, whatever lake it was. And I said, okay, whatever you got to do to get the boys there, and the girls as well. We had a very talented team. The boys wound up winning the Section 2 championship. Owen Putton and Eric Hunick led the way. I'd like to bring up Coach John Sauls right now, and he's got a bunch of his skiers to come up with him.
Well, thank you, Board. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Thank you, Mr. Cullen, for that great introduction. And obviously, thanks for having us out tonight. We know you guys have a busy schedule, so we appreciate you fitting us in and recognizing us. And thank you to everybody who came out. So I'll start with just talking about how, I guess, impossible, I don't want to say impossible the dream was, but how difficult the dream was, I think, to achieve this year. Mr. Cullen said no snow, which obviously made it a bit of a challenge for us to get quality practices in and then ski 7 to 10 meets and put ourselves in a position to really compete at not only the section level but the state level. But that's exactly what these guys did and what our girls did as well. It was amazing to know that we were only on snow for 4 days for practices and meets for double that and go out there when it really mattered and basically bring home a title that, well, we haven't had in about 13 years. That's been in Queensberry's trophy case for some time. And I know it meant everything for these guys to be able to take that away from Queensberry, and it certainly meant a lot to me as well. And I know it meant a lot to our parents who have been working, I think, as hard to make this team as successful as they've been. So just to kind of follow Chuck and talk about some individual accomplishments here. So first sectional title in 13 years for these guys. Second overall, I believe, since the program started in 1985. Owen, section champion, and finished 5th at the state level. Aaron, 7th at the state level. And our boys team as a whole at the state level finished 2nd overall as a team. So tremendous accomplishments. We have a really, really bright future, just as these guys do, certainly at the next level in college. And I know these guys are just tremendous individuals in addition to being great skiers and great athletes, great students. And they are leaving a great legacy behind for the kids who are coming up. And I know they're just awesome kids. Proud to be standing next to them right now. So, thanks.
One of the things that we always try to do when we're hiring coaches is we always try to find people that are passionate about the sport, that they're interested in it. And John has been with the program the last couple of years, and to say that his passion for the sport is tremendous, and that's ultimately what's going to lead to continued success for our Nordic skiers. Next up, we have somebody again who's very familiar to being here, and that's our Alpine ski team under the direction of, I see Rich Burnley and Matt Moran back there, who've been longtime coaches for us. We do have an individual champion on the boys' side. We have Evan Scriven, who won the individual boys Section 2 championship, and our girls' team also won the Section 2 championship. This is the 4th straight team championship for the girls at the sectional level. I think they make a little bit more snow on the mountains than they did down here, so they had a little bit more of an opportunity to ski. But again, Rich and Matt managed very well to make sure that the kids had a great experience. I'd like to call up Rich, Matt, and our Alpine skiers up here.
Yeah, it was a trying season for us too. We got on snow the first, one day before the first meet, and there's no way to train to go 40 miles an hour downhill without being on the hill doing it. So for one day, it was pretty impressive. Evan won 7 races in a row this year. He finished third in the first race. He won every race thereafter until he got to states. He had a tough day the first day, didn't finish. He finished second in the GS, the second day at states. You may have seen last week the Channel 13 Athlete of the Week was a ski racer from Queensbury, Alex Holman. Evan beat him 8 out of 9 times that he raced him this year. I was counting. And breaking news, and tomorrow's Saratogian, Evan is the Saratogian's male Alpine skier of the year. The girls, what can I say? Anchored by co-captain Sarah Petro. This is her fourth sectional team, excuse me. She's been on every one of them. 2 freshmen, a junior and a senior. So we're looking real good for next year too. At sectionals, they've all finished in the top 11. Top 11 in GS and top 9 in slalom out of 80 girls. So that's a pretty impressive feat. And I'd like to thank Dr. Robinson, the board, and the transportation department does a wonderful job. Our gym is 40 miles away at West Mountain, and so it's quite a trip to get there every time. They do a great job transporting these guys.
Yeah, just to echo that, it was a difficult season with no snow.
Yeah, it's loud enough. It's good. Just stand straight up.
And thank you for your support. We're lucky to work with talented athletes, and maybe next year we'll get snow.
Thank you.
We'll try to put some snow in the budget.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will not imitate you on.
Okay, again, another team that's no stranger to being here. We had a fantastic day over February breakdown at the University of Albany. Within a 45-minute stretch, we won both the boys and girls indoor track and field championships. The first one I'd like to talk about is the girls. This is the 4th time in 5 years that the girls have won the sectional championship. I know Coach Cloutier's in the back. They have many individual champions. Rob has built a program that not only competes at the local level, the sectional level, the state level. He always sends me these texts. It's, state 1, US 3, for this event. Our athletes compete against the best athletes on the East Coast. They participate and compete against athletes across the board nationally and hold their own. He's built an incredible program. And again, he's no stranger to being here with his girls, but I like to call it Rob Cloutier, and I think Keith Jordan's back there, and his girls indoor track and field team.
My half and half.
All right, so been blessed to be up here a few times over the last couple of years. Usually I get home and I think everything I said was really dumb. So, I'm going to read it. We had a roster of about 90 girls this winter, and while about 30 of them earned varsity opportunities, I do believe that all of them were a part of a special legacy. This group continues to excel and achieve high honors and accolades, too numerous to list, but what is distinctive is the humble manner in which they go about it. They have embraced the core values of what our coaching staff has highlighted. These girls are tops in the classroom, community, and in the sport, both locally and nationally, year after year. They have mastered balance and adopting our motto, the process is the goal. I am confident they make Shen proud and will go on to lead satisfying and successful lives. So thank you to everyone who supports the opportunity we coaches have to lead, and both the athletes who thrive in our tremendous athletic department. Thank you.
A few years ago, we were able to, we used to basically have a co-ed track program, and depending on where that coach came from, the program tipped one way or another. And several years ago, with the support of Dr. Robinson and the board, we were basically able to have a girls indoor coach and a boys indoor coach, and it's led to the resurgence of our boys indoor program, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Along with getting that, we were really able to find the right coach. And I remember having a conversation with Ryan Fenton, who has a track background, again, who works out of my office, and said, man, you got to see the stuff Jason Burlingame's doing with the track guys. It's incredible in terms of the speed workouts they're doing, and said it's only going to be a matter of time until they're a championship team year in and year out. And he really started developing this program from freshman all the way right up. And it's taken him a couple of years to get there, but we kind of saw this coming, and it's really been an evolution. So I would like to call up Jason Burlingame, who's the head coach, and a bunch of his runners who are here, and he'll go over some of the individual accolades of his team, the boys indoor track and field team Section 2 champions.
Appreciate it. Evening. Come on down, guys. I just want to take a second before we start to publicly acknowledge and thank the board and Dr. Robinson, Mr. Coleman, and many other members of the Shenendehowa community. This has been a somewhat emotional winter for us as a team. For me personally, I lost my father this winter, and then I had a baby within a month, my second. And honestly, I don't know how I would have lived through it without the support of all of these guys standing to the left and the right of me and of all of you. I was overwhelmed by the support of this community. It's a special one, so cherish it. The boys team really stood up to the challenge. We were sure going in that we felt we had all the right components, and they proved themselves time and time again throughout the season. We remained undefeated, which is why I still have this ridiculous beard. It's the joy of coaching consecutive seasons to keep the streak running. And we had a number of individual sectional champions at the end of the season. To name a few here, there's so many. Mitch Halpern was a double champion, won in both the mile and the 1K. Tyler Schmidt was a champion in the 600, and he was closely followed by his teammate, Matt Jacks, that came in less than a tenth of a second apart. Nick Michalowski was a champion in the 55 hurdles. These boys, they made all of us proud, and it's hard to convey in a sport like track and field. There's so many events, and you don't win the championship unless you have that total team effort. Without the field, without the throws, our throwers this year who couldn't be here, they actually swept both throw events. We took first, second, and third in the shot put, first, second, and third in the weight throw, which is I don't think has ever been done other than in the 2008 outdoor season, and also by Shenendehowa. So it was a tremendous honor just to be a part of this program this year. We sent 8 boys to states. All 8 of them made the podium, and we were fortunate to race a sprint medley relay at the national level that took 9th place. It's the 9th fastest in the country this year, and the 30th fastest in New York State history. So just again, really pleased to be able to present these guys tonight. And I know, as Coach said, they'll continue to make this community very, very proud. Thank you for all of your support.
Great. Thanks, Coach.
We're almost there. We had a pretty successful winter, so got a couple more to go, and then we'll be done. Again, a team that is really no stranger to being here. I think it's probably one of our deepest and most consistent programs year in and year out, and that is our wrestling program under the direction of Rob Weeks. Again, to put their success into perspective, this is their 11th straight Class A championship. And I was thinking about this when I went to that meet in the invitational. I said, their 11th straight championship. I said, when the streak started, their seniors were in first grade, and most of these kids were in preschool when that streak started. Come on through, boys, right here. At one point, I think we had more than 2/3 of all the finalists in the class tournament. We sent a number of kids to the state qualifiers. We had Kieran Shanahan and Kevin Parker who made the state tournament. And again, for the second year in a row, we're very pleased to have a repeat state champion. Kevin Parker repeated as state champion in the 182-pound class. Kevin won it last year. What class last year? 170. If you know anything about wrestling, and Ken, you know these are tough classes and not easy to win back-to-back state championships in. Where was I in here? Coach Weeks is here with us tonight. I thought he wasn't going to be here with us tonight. I just want to tell you, he also had an issue, a family issue during the state qualifier tournament. And with the help of his amazing coaching staff, they were able to pick up the slack. They never lost anything, and I think that kind of shows the structure and program we have in place, that everybody kind of knows their role. And Dr. Robinson talks about so much about that in our organization, that everybody kind of knows their role. And when Coach Weeks had to step out to deal with a family issue, we had coaches like Karani and Capizzuti who were able to step right in and lead the boys on into success. So, Coach Weeks.
Hello. First of all, thank you to the board, Dr. Robinson, and Chris Cullen. I wanted to start things off by saying that I did have an issue during the postseason. It makes me very happy to have assistant coaches that step up and do a nice job for us. But I also wanted to recognize Mr. Coleman for the vision he had with the weight room. I think a lot of my guys can attest to the fact that having that room available during the day has made a tremendous difference. Some of us like it so much we wear tight shirts to the ceremony so we can flex a little bit. That being said, though, it's definitely it takes the burden off us as coaches. He just didn't have his warm-up top. That wasn't the reason. But you do look good. With that being said, looking at this group right here, this is a total of 31 years of varsity participation with this small group of athletes. From 6 years for a guy like Kevin Parker to a first year for a guy like Shane Walpole. It's truly a family-oriented sport, and if you take a look from one end to the other, we pretty much have an opening for just about anybody, from a 99-pounder to a 299-pounder. So I'm blessed, of course, to be in the district. I've been here since 1997, and every year, though it's sad to see kids graduate, I'm very pleased to see the next generation coming up. Ironically, we have 10 seniors graduating this year, so we have some challenges ahead of us, but with my coaching staff and the support of the administration and Mr. Coleman, I think we'll be okay. Just to recognize these guys individually, Cody Duell, our 99-pounder, 106-pound, Mike Demanda, Nick Hotelling, 120, Dietrich Hartman, 132, Kevin Gardino, Tom Burns, 138, Danny DeGennaro, 152, Anthony Denala, 160, our state champ, 182-pounder Kevin Parker, 195-pounder Muscles Dusty Bruins, 220-pounder Tyler Comito, and of course our heavyweight Shane Walpole. This guy, a couple people down for me, sent me a text earlier today. He said, am I supposed to be at this as well? And I said, of course you are. You're part of our team. You weren't there at the end of the year because of an injury, but that's kind of a special thing with wrestling, is that we kind of pick each other up. So it's nice to have the support from the administration, the community, and of course I'd like to recognize these guys for doing a great job this year. So thank you.
You guys keep going that way. Keep going. I just asked.
It's warm.
Warm.
Like hot yoga in here.
That was on purpose.
Yoga in here. Dear God. Thank you.
It's like the gym in the middle of winter, right?
First they lock the door, then they turn the
Next up, we have a team that, again, it's their second year in a row being here. It's our boys basketball team who repeated as Section 2 champions. They won the New York State Regional Championship, advanced all the way to the state Final Four, suffered a tough loss to the eventual state champion in the semis, but really carried this community along for a tremendous ride. To tell you how popular basketball was during this year, and Dr. Robinson can attest and goes to most of these games, we had to stop letting people in at 7 of 8 home games this year. We couldn't let people in. The gym was so packed. And of course, Mr. Flint loves that. It's his favorite part. He says the gym's too crowded, so we have to hold people up. But it shows you what kind of community support this team had. To give you perspective on how good this team was this year, they rose all the way up. They started as the 10th ranked team in New York State as the defending champions. They rose all the way up, spent 6 weeks as the number 1 ranked team in New York State. They actually made the USA Today national ranking, and at one point were ranked 23rd in the United States, which is just an incredible accomplishment to even get to that level. The seniors on this team have left an incredible legacy for the future generation of Plainsmen, to follow. They finished their season ranked number 3 in New York State. They're 2-time defending section champion, 2-time defending regional champion, and these seniors have been part of just a complete, it's been an amazing 18 months of basketball on the boys' side here at Shenendehowa, and I'd like to call up Tony Dezikis and our boys' basketball team.
Seniors on that side, underclassmen on this side. There you go. First of all, I think we need to revisit. I know we're in athletics right now, but I heard the ski team practice 4 times. I practice 100. We have to revisit the pay scale for coaches, apparently. After last year, the accomplishments from last year's team were incredible. Where do you go from there? How do you achieve more than that? You're state champions first time in like 30 years. You start in the spring. Every coach knows that the off seasons where it starts, where you have to work hard to get in the gym, and that's exactly what these guys did. They didn't rest on last year's successes. They started working right away. We knew we had some leadership coming back. Kevin Herter is one of the most recognizable players in the country. That's always fun to have when you're a coach. But with this team, one thing that will always stand out to me, and hopefully makes sense, but sometimes the way you achieve something has more value than what you achieved. Considering what we've achieved the last 2 years, that says a lot about the kids that are coming through this school, this community, this program. With the support of the board, Dr. Robinson, who's right there behind me in those games, supporting, cheering on kids, hugging kids when they need consoling after a tough loss. Mr. Coleman, who's in his office all the time. We were kidding around, calling it the, Kevin. He would have to release press releases all the time on Kevin Herter because all of the accolades. Chris Coleman, in my mind, is the best AD in the state, possibly the country, and he's certainly the busiest. Our seniors, as I mentioned, Kevin Herter is a tremendous player who turned himself into an unbelievable leader for this team. With all the notoriety, all the accolades, all the attention he gets, this is still a gentleman who goes to Chango to read to the elementary school kids. He's worked my camps, and I've seen him sit there in a chair, and after camp, I think he had probably 30 kids wanting him to sign their sneakers, and he sits there and he signs every single one of them. G had one kid, but he thought he was Kevin. So, he signed it. No comment. But you couldn't ask for a better senior leadership on any team. They really are everything. You talk about a profile of a Shen student. This is it. Not just student athletes, just students. Great kids, tremendous kids, and great athletes, obviously. The underclassmen who really didn't have a ton of experience. I always mention Luke Hicks, who was selected as a Channel 13 All-Star. How many minutes did you play in the sectional final game last year? None. Okay, 0. Could have been the MVP. Kevin was the MVP, but certainly Luke could have been the MVP of the sectionals. Had 25 points in the sectional finals. Goes to show the process when you go to a school like Shen, the process that you have to endure. You don't walk into these programs that you see, the swimming, the wrestling, the volleyball. They're all elite programs. So no matter how good you are as a sophomore, freshman, and sometimes even a junior, you have to wait. You have to build character. You have to sit the bench. You have to learn to cheer on your teammates as you're not playing. And that's what these kids do. That's what these student athletes do in all the programs. And what you get is somebody who appreciates what comes to them. So again, we appreciate all the support. Last year when I left the Glens Falls Civic Center after winning the state championship, I had 95 text messages. And I was thinking, okay, after we lost, there wouldn't be that kind of support. I probably had equally as many saying, great job, still proud of you. People who went through Shen back in 85, 87, they have their own webpage, Friends of Shen Basketball. That's incredibly supportive and tells about the old successes as well as the recent successes. So thank you everyone for your support. We appreciate it.
I just want to just offer a couple things about just the boys basketball. Kevin Herter, as you know, was named, you may or may not know, was named New York State Mr. Basketball. It's the highest individual honor a player in New York State can receive. And I think, that's a tremendous representation. Kevin is going down to the Final Four this weekend and going to represent Shenendehowa in the National High School three-point shooting contest. So we want to wish him well. And I just want to point out, it's not easy to be a football player, a basketball player, and a baseball player at Shenendehowa to be a three-sport athlete. Mike Galuli is one of those rare athletes. Mike has been a member of a state championship team, 3 regional championship teams, 3 sectional championship teams, a sectional finalist team, and right now he's 5-time members of Suburban Council championship team. So, and he's got a pretty good baseball team and a pretty good pitcher who's, the staff who's going to help them do some good things in the spring. So, an incredible accomplishment for this senior group all the way across the board. So, congratulations, fellas. Our final team of the night, again, was another team that just gave us some incredible thrills, some incredible highlights during the course of the season. Our girls basketball team also had an amazing season. They won the Section 2 championship, regional championship, were state finalists, went all the way to the state championship game. Tough loss in the finals, but like the boys, had an incredible season with much to be proud of. They finished their season ranked number 4 in New York State. They had 3 losses on the season. They lost to Capital Prep, who was the Connecticut State champion. They lost to St. Anthony's, who was the New York City Catholic School Athletic Association champion, and Ossining, who wound up being the New York State champion and Federation championship champion. So a pretty good season all total. 23-3 was their final record. And again, Joe Murphy, the head coach with Brian Rubino, just did a fantastic job. Coach Murphy and the girls basketball team. Come on up, Bill.
As everyone said tonight, I thank the board, Dr. Robinson, Mr. Cullen, for having us here tonight and the support you both gave us all year. A lot of the coaches I work with in the league and in the area are very jealous of the support we have from you guys. They came down to New York City to surprise the girls in one of our games, and they're at almost every home game, so we really do appreciate the support. This year was a special season. We had 8 seniors, 5 underclassmen on our roster, and from day one to the last second of that state title game, they bought into the team concept. I asked them all to write down their goals in the beginning of the season, and no one put anything individual. They all put their goal between either a sectional title or win a state title. We didn't achieve that goal on the scoreboard, but we all know what kind of team we had. We talked about being a family all year, and they really bought into that concept. The best compliment I got almost after every game in the sectional title run and the regionals was how impressed everyone was watching this team play together. They really did play as a team. There was no egos. Everyone just played their part, very supportive of each other, and this team meant everything to each other. The tears that were coming out of their eyes after the sectional title game, before the clock even struck 0, just showed how much they cared about the team and achieving that goal after what we happened last year with our loss in the title game. Very proud of them as a team. There were a lot of individual accolades throughout the season. But again, we focused on the team the whole year, and we'll do the same, going forward. But it was a great run, and we appreciate the support.
Thank you. Nice. Nice job. Good job.
Joe, Carly's first time, fourth time. And I would like to point out Carly Boland. Most Carly is the first player in league history to ever be Player of the Year in the Suburban Council 4 years in a row. So congratulations to Carly. Just in closing, I want to offer this thought about just a couple things that highlight for the boys and girls. We had an incredible winter season, and just the boys and girls championships. People always say, about high school sports. I just want to put this in perspective. The boys and girls basketball teams played back-to-back at the Times Union Center on March 1st in the Section 2 Class AA championship. The paid admission that night was 7,451 people at the Times Union Center. I think everybody who was there was looking around and saying, "Oh my God, they'd never seen people sitting up in the upper decks." An awful lot of people came to see Shen lose. That didn't happen, unfortunately. But it just goes to show that people really do come out in this community, and especially really came out to support the boys basketball team. They went to Hudson Valley. They played back-to-back at Hudson Valley. And the support that the boys players showed the girls and the girls players showed the boys, the photographer from the Daily Gazette sent me a really nice picture after he won the Class AA championship in boys and girls at the Times Union Center of both teams standing there. If you've been in my office, we have all those pictures up. It'll be one of those pictures that we get up on the wall, and it will always remind me of what a special winter this was this year. And lastly, to highlight again, thanks to the board, I would like to offer even the teams that aren't here, every team, 9 straight seasons, New York State Public High School Athletic Association Scholar Athlete teams. We're on our way for the 3rd year in a row to be a school of distinction, and that speaks volumes about what type of student athletes we have. So again, thanks to Dr. Robinson especially, and the support of the Board of Education. Thank you very much.
I am.
So just in case, so you guys can go home. So. So we go from full house to empty nesters.
I told Sharon she's not released. I said she has to.
Thank you.
No.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So,
This is cozy.
So we're talking to a friend here.
yes, so we go from full house to empty nester just like that. However, this conversation is an important part of our budget development process, and certainly the information that's being shared tonight will be shared with the public as a part of our roadshow as well. So a lot of this information, recognizing that as I look in the audience now, and certainly don't want to discuss the viewing, dismiss the viewing audience, a lot of this information has been shared with the board before. So I won't necessarily go into detail with every piece of it. However, if there are questions that the board has, we can try to clarify those questions as well. This first slide kind of put everything in perspective in terms of the referendum that we're proposing to the board for adoption on April 5th and subsequently to the voters on May 17th. We have 5 components we're going to walk through tonight. The 2016-17 proposed budget, the bus purchase resolution, a capital construction resolution. There's a change in timeline, which I'm going to emphasize in a second, a capital reserve establishment, and the candidates for the Board of Education. We have a public hearing. The official public hearing is actually May 10th, which is the timing of it is always awkward because it's after the board has already adopted the budget, but that's the legal timeline that's stipulated by the state of New York. And the voting date is May 17th here in Guana from 7 to 9. Something I want to point out that this year, for the first time, we're required by law to use the new electronic voting machines. So it's going to be a new experience for us. We hope it will be a positive and seamless experience for us, but we'll be using the new voting machines this year. We'll be putting out information. Kelly DeFiciano will be working, putting out information, as much information we can get to remind people about some of the basics of how it works and those kind of things, so people will come in to the polls for the first time are not shocked with that experience. So we'll talk more about that as we get close to go through the process. Something I always talk about, and I think it's always important to talk about, that this whole budget process is about how do we leverage opportunities. So in other words, we're looking at what we did, we're looking at what we're doing, and we're looking at what we want to do. And so we look at all those things and figure out how then we leverage opportunity from one year to the next, and quite frankly, build to the future. So the budget is always future perspective. What are we going to do? Not necessarily what are we doing now. So leverage opportunities become a big part of the budget process as we move forward. You've seen this before, that we try to have some, and it's ironic that you know, as I sat here tonight, I'm thinking like, wow, people actually listen, or they just ironic that a lot of the coaches talk about the trust the process. And so we have a process, and we trust the process. We trust that if we go through the process, that at the end result will be something that we all can be proud of. And the end result will be something that the voters can support. So we have a very deliberate process that we go through with the budget, very deliberate process with the board in terms of sharing of information and exchange of dialogue and suggestion. So this dictates the process, very principled process that we go through, again, to try to have consistent outcome from year after year after year. So trusting the process is a major part of what we do. This kind of highlights some things that some of the focus that we really focused on in the budget. The first question we always ask when we're either adding new or investing in existing, what's the value added? What's the benefit to be gained from this? Again, using an example from tonight, you heard Coach Weeks talking about the fitness center. Several years ago, we had this conversation here about making an investment in a fitness center. So what's the value add? The value add is what you saw tonight. Total, not only for student athletes, and I would actually invite the board and maybe try to arrange it someday to actually come during a school day and see the wide diversity of students that's using their facility. Literally every period, every day, it's filled with young people engaged in physical fitness. And so we see the value add, just an example of that to piece of it. We talk about the cost effectiveness. You're going to hear some things tonight that talk about, so cost effectiveness sometimes not necessarily cutting costs, it's sometimes investing in something that provides an opportunity in the future. So we're going to talk about some of those things, some investments that will yield a bigger benefit moving forward. And certainly the tax implication is something that we think about all the time, and having a tax cap limits what we can do, but we always try to figure out how do we work within those limitations. We can't change the limitations, so we figure out how do we best work within those limitations and maximize opportunities within those limitations. So that's what drives the budget process in many ways. So in a minute, I'm just going to briefly again walk through some of the things that drive some of the costs. The primary focus of the budget clearly is on instruction, but recognize that the provision of instruction is supported by many other things. And so even tonight, again, we're recognizing CAP teams, we're recognizing student athletes. All those things are part of the broader instructional provisions. And sometimes people want to separate, extracurricular from this. All those things make the experience rich for kids, be it a student athlete or be it students who went to Model UN or students who go to a National Spelling Bee. All those things are students who go to, I'm looking at Mr. Presley, students who perform in a musical concert. All those things make a rich experience for kids. All those things are part of the larger instructional experience that we try to put forth as well. And clearly, there's some operational things that we always need to do to ensure that we have the right facilities and right infrastructure in place to address those things. So when we go through the budget process, we try to look for opportunities to preserve, to save costs, to allow us to do other things. Because when we think about the budget, our goal is if the cost footprint is this, we recognize that we won't necessarily change the cost footprint so much, but we figure out what can we do within that footprint and maximize the resources as much as we can within that footprint, recognizing that the growth of the budget is going to be fairly incremental. And so we look for opportunities within that budget. This past year, and for the second time, we've been talking about some reduction in ERS and TRS costs. The numbers being presented to the board tonight is slightly different from the numbers we presented last time, because as we fine-tune the budget, and quite frankly, as we continue to look at what the state budget is going to do, we try to figure out what are those opportunities we have to preserve costs, or even in some cases, when I say preserve costs, not to expend certain dollar amounts, so we can always look at budget in a multi-year sequence. Because the last thing we want to do is build a budget this year that's flat, and then next year is a huge spike to taxpayers. Because like most people plan ahead. Most people want to say, my tax bill will be around. And we want it to be in that around area when people have, or quite frankly with you, in some cases, as Mr. Trainer pointed out last year, the tax bill actually went down, depends on your situation. So we want to always have a flat line progression. So we made some adjustments to ERS, TRS costs, looking at some of our staffing patterns, what we anticipated moving forward, and we made some adjustments based upon that. But it creates some opportunities within the budget to do some other things, to repurpose some opportunities. Similarly, we as the board knows, the board's approved an incentive. So we see some potential opportunities with the incentive to bolster some of our costs, some of our instructional provisions. We'll talk about those things in a second as well. Something that the last time we spoke about that's not here, and I mentioned last time, we were kind of hedging our bets in terms of what are we going to do with utilities. And you know, if you look at the past winter, you would say, well, you know, next year is going to be this way. Guess what? Forecasters can't even predict the weather for tomorrow, much less for me to predict the weather a year from now. So what we're proposing in this budget is, quite frankly, to keep that same budgetary line that we had before versus trying to make some reductions, making an assumption that next winter is going to be similarly mild. Because if the Nordic coach has his way and the snow gods are in his favor, we'll have an awful winter next year. So we made those adjustments back to say, you know what, let's look at this whole sequence again and not put in a situation that we don't have to hedge our bets as much if we don't have to, particularly since later on I'm going to talk about the potential that we may see some additional state aid. So if that provides some opportunities, it takes some of the risk out of the equation, so to speak. So we made some adjustments to that piece of the budget as well. Just from the additional piece of it, again, not to go into a lot of the details, we see this year's budget from an addition perspective as what I call rounding out some of the square corners of our system. So we're looking at some additional staffing to address enrollment growth, some AIS needs, particularly at the middle school and high school level. So we're looking at those kind of things. We're looking at expanding our capacity to deal with technology. And a couple, actually probably a couple months, end of May, beginning of June, the board is going to hear more about planning that we have in place to look at one-to-one and where that planning process is going and how that may unfold into the coming school year. So we're looking at those kind of things as we move forward. So we're not adding a lot of staff, but we add a lot of staff will have a big impact on things. It's one of those things that the proverbial, people always say the straw that breaks the camel back. We're saying, well, this is the straw that's going to allow the camel to run by taking certain things, certain pressures off the system so the system can run much more effectively and rounding some of those square edges off. So some of those kind of things that we're looking to do on the instructional side. Continue on the instructional side. Some neat little things I want to highlight. One, the board is going to hear soon our K-12 counseling plan, for example, and talk about how we look at a counseling from a K-12 perspective. So we want to add some capacity because one of the things that we know we're dealing with now is changing needs and demands of students. From the whole academic landscape changing to the mental health landscape changing. And so how do we look at those kind of things and look at our capacity and see what can we do to, again, round those square edges off and make those things better, as well as looking at items such as how do we provide ample resources, instructional resources for students versus having to be contingent upon how much their parents is willing to pay the extra to get the extra resources versus providing those extra resources that make the learning experience complete for our students. So those are some of the rounding off edges things that we're looking to do.
Let me ask you a question just before you go on with that slide and the previous slide, 2.5 full-time equivalents and one equivalent. I think we understand that, but I just want you to reaffirm. We're not necessarily talking about exactly 2.5
No,
positions.
no.
This is to be determined as we go into the next year, right?
Very good point. One of the things that we always do with a budget is build capacity. And so and it's, when you think about it, here we sit in March, and this process actually started in October. But here we sit in March for something that we're going to look to implement in September. So just think about that time difference. So over the course of the next several months, in particular after the adoption of the budget, is where we really start then really trying to fine-tune, identify how do we best maximize the capacity. We have broad ideas. In fact, we have more than broad ideas. We have some specific areas that we want to focus on, but we won't make those decisions until we finally know this is, in fact, the best way to use a portion of certain things or all of certain things as well. So the process doesn't end after voter approval of the budget. In fact, that's where the hard work starts, because that's now we really want to look at our existing situation and figure again what's the best way to strategically use the resources as we move forward. And kind of put this in perspective, last year, we, I think it was almost 18 FTEs that we added to the budget. So we had 2.5. And somebody say, wow, that's a big difference. However, preserving those 18 was a huge part of this budget, because we always say we don't want to put something in year one and have to take it out year two. We want to be able to have the viability of the budget becomes a major part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Just to continue on the instructional side a little bit, I mentioned that there's a pretty extensive process that's taking place now, being led by Dr. Wood and others, to really trying to think about how do we use technology to transform the learning and teaching experience. And I deliberately use those terms in that order, learning and teaching experience, because we've been talking about for years, and yes, we've been making a lot of progress in terms of teaching kids the way they learn, because the reality of it is, and we all have it now, at our stations right now, each one of us has I'm looking at a smartphone at our, and so the whole dynamics of how we, even as adults, interface and interact, access information is significantly different, but that's new to us, but it's natural to them. And so how do we ensure that we evolve as a system in a way that's natural to our end users, our students? So we're looking at some initiatives moving forward as well. In addition to expanding some opportunities for students and using the summer months more effectively, because we do recognize that for some students it's a tremendous and missed opportunity during those summer months. How do we use that time much more effectively for our students? Yeah, I'm floating away here. So that's my timer, so I'm talking too slow.
So Elizabeth has another clicker out there, and she's moving you through, right? Yeah.
That thing must be Kathy. So those are some of the things that we're looking to do in terms of capacity. In terms of some of the operational supports, just want to spend a couple of minutes talk about operational supports, because these are the things that oftentimes people don't see and appreciate until they don't occur. And so we're looking at things such as some instructional clerical support during the summer to ensure we do those kind of things. The training that's necessary, continued training as we transition it's not even our financial system, it's our human resource system. WinCap covers HR, finance, absences, a lot of things that deals with all our personnel management. And so how do we ensure that we train people and have that process seamless and those kind of things? You saw tonight, we catered to a lot of, and Mr. Coleman was still here, probably almost 2,000 student athletes over the course of the respective seasons. So looking at capacity is always the thing that we want to do, and we certainly, yes, we still have a situation that we have to cut kids. That will always occur when you have a competitive environment, but particularly for our younger sports, our modified sports, how do we keep those opportunities to allow students the opportunity to grow and, quite frankly, to even demonstrate their potential to yield and be a varsity athlete in the future. So we're looking at some of those kind of things as well. A big cost for us is always health insurance, and one that we try to manage through our union negotiations. And try to have a flat line increase with health insurance. That's one of those areas that every year we have to look at very closely. So again, not to go through, yes, I'm sorry.
What's the trend on the health insurance? Is the increase less than it was last year?
It's roughly the same. Say this way, it would have been if we didn't do some of the things that we did to modify our plan design over the past couple of years, the increase would have been significantly higher. So in fact, we're in conversation now, for example, with CSEA negotiation. We just finished teaching negotiations. Every negotiation we have health insurance is a part of the conversation. And it's not about trying to take away benefits from employees. It's trying to, how do we reduce the overall cost of it? So not only us as an institution, but also the employees of the institution are not bearing an increased burden. So right now, we're looking at a 10% trend, but that's health and drugs. And the big piece that's really just striking increase is actually the drug costs. We're seeing some significant spikes, in particular what we, the specialty drugs. Those drugs that, if you had to pay for it, we have certain drugs that people had to pay for it. It's $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year for some of those specialized drugs that's out there. And, it's a great thing because people are living longer, but it's also an expensive proposition when you're trying to support it through a health plan. So we're always trying to balance those things as well. So I would say our trend from year to year right now has been pretty flat line, even with those adjustments in the budget process.
Thank
you. Just again, some operational things. I just want to highlight this because always one of the two things I want to highlight here is safety and security is always a priority area that we look at in the budget process as well. So again, we're going to continue with our focus, and we hope that within the next 6 to 8 months, we'll have swipe cards to access buildings and do other things with, and surveillance systems that's more in the cloud, so you can access from a computer anywhere, not just a particular computer, those kind of things. Because unfortunately, the reality is we live in a world where we always have to be conscious of safety and security, and that's a reality for us as a school as well. So we think about those things through the budget process. So those are the some of the changes in the budget. I'm just going to briefly walk through these, not to go. I kind of went through this before. If you see the percentage on the far right here, you see most percentage going to fluctuate from 2 to 3% within the budget process. And when you see those percentages higher, there's a clear reason for some of those kind of things. For instance, if you look at the contractual line, you see the contractual going about 8.7%. But when you look at the BOCES line, it's going down by 4.5%, because it's the redistribution of how we allocate funds within the budget that's causing that differential in those two lines when you think about those kind of things. So I just want to highlight those things to the board as we go through the process. So as we go through the bottom line, a couple of things again I want to highlight is that right now our debt service line, last time we had a conversation, we had a slight reduction in the debt service. However, one of the things that we want to do in particular as we go into the second presentation, talking about capital project, how do we keep that debt service line the same so we don't have a spike in 18-19 as a result of the new project coming on board? So how do we have a flat line approach to the debt service piece? So the piece that's somewhat different for the board, the last time we were having this conversation, we were projecting a percentage increase about 1.4, roughly 1.3 something, rounded off. Right now we're at a 2.1 budgetary increase. Just to give you a point of comparison, the increase of this current year's budget that we're living in was 1.72. So again, within that ballpark of it. So that's one side of the story. So the expenditure side is one side of the story, then the revenue side is the other side of the story that put the whole story into context. I'm just going to skip over these slides because just kind of exemplify a lot of the things that we just spoke about and go to this piece of it. When we look over the 5-year perspective, taking consideration the proposed budget, we again fluctuating right around 2% budget increase over the 5-year lens as we move forward. So it's one of those things that we're very cognizant of in terms of what's our overall increase and what's the in comparison to past years. So one of the big pieces that we're waiting to hear, and in fact I was even, must admit, I was looking at my phone hoping that we'd get some information that the state has made some movement on the state budget. Unfortunately, I didn't see anything. But one of the big pieces that we're kind of anticipating is that based upon some news media, nothing's confirmed, but some conversation that people have, is what's going to happen with for us, the gap elimination reduction. Because for us, it's a significant dollar amount. We don't anticipate, even if they do anything with the foundation aid, we don't anticipate Shen seeing a significant piece of it because it's somewhat wealth driven. And I often say that we're too rich to be poor, we're too poor to be rich. We're really, if you think the state average, they use 1 as a state average, and we're like 1.1. So we're like the quintessential model district. So if they had to say, let's pick a district across the state, this is Shen in many ways. We kind of model that from a fiscal perspective when you look at the extremes of wealth across the state. So one of the big pieces that's changed here is our overall state aid piece. And I'm going to show that second from the last time we had the conversation. I'm going to show you why that occurred as we move forward in a second. Another piece that we made some adjustment down is the appropriate fund balance. And the reason why that's adjusted down, because this is a what if we were to get the full reinstatement of the GEA, it provides the board an opportunity to, quite frankly, to live to play another day, if you want to use the sports analogy, by looking at that fund balance allocation, because every year we have to squeeze the budget to create the fund balance to contribute to the next year. So if we have a situation where we have a relatively tight budget and we have opportunity to quite frankly, not squeeze so hard, because squeezing the budget means, in many cases, not covering certain costs or doing certain things that we actually planned for. So squeezing budget is just not a accounting exercise. It's literally saying, should we replace that position now, or can we get away with it for a period of time and try to save some costs? So that's what I mean by the squeezing the budget process. So one of the things that's being proposed to the board, in past years, in fact, several years ago, our fund balance contribution was almost upwards of $4 million. Each year we've been trying to reduce that down, because it's one of those things that if we cannot generate a fund balance, it's an automatic shift to the taxpayers. And so how do we minimize that potential each year? So each year we have opportunity to try to minimize that potential as we move forward. So the proposal is the appropriate fund balance from $2 million to 1.5. That's a change from the last time we had a conversation. And I'm going to show you why that's important here in a second, or how that comes about. This is the big difference, the big shift in perspective, where the GEA balance, we're proposing to see that entire amount. In fact, let me go to a better slide that talks about that. This has been our GEA history over the years. So we're making the assumption that if the state reinstate this entire $2.5 million, so therefore our balance goes to zero, that creates a revenue opportunity that also then offsets some of the expenditure increases on the other side. And how does this play out? What's going to be very similar to the board is actually this slide. Our budget, current year's budget is 162. Our proposed budget 166. That's a 2.1% increase in the budget. Tax levy cap, this is the mandated per the state formula to come up with a tax cap, is 0.78. The budget that we are proposing is going to have the lowest levy in probably 20 years. I could confirm 15. It could be easily 20 years. And that's going to be 0.74. So again, below already a low cap, which is one of the target goals that we want to have. We want to ensure that we live within the cap. On the same note, we have an opportunity to do some things on the expenditure side. So from a taxpayer perspective, we'll be seeing, if this goes through the board and subsequently the voters, we'll be seeing one of the lowest tax levy increases in certainly over 2 decades. And so we want to look at those kind of things as we move forward and promote that as well. So this gives the board a perspective in terms of what does that mean. So the two sides to the equation, the expenditure side and then the revenue side. And this is, again, contingent upon getting full reinstatement of gap elimination. If tonight I hear that, whoa, the state decided to do something differently, on April 5th, we will be making adjustments and come back to the board. So that's the reason why I say it's a process. And so it's never final, quite frankly, until May 17th when the voters give the nod of it, but kind of give the board a perspective. It's a building process all the time. So just like all of you will be watching the news over the course of the next several days and see what's happening with the state budget, see what announcements are made about education funding and what's the impact for us. And based upon that impact, we make those adjustments accordingly. And again, we'll certainly live within a tax levy, the tax cap limit. The question is what's going to be the impact on the expenditure side of the budget. I'll stop there to see if there are any questions pertaining to this.
Question.
So this is the first proposition that will be on the agenda for the board. The second proposition will be a little faster here. You've heard Mr. Karen present the bus replacement cycle, and one of the things that we try to do as a system is, again, it's a very systematic approach. We want to keep the age of our buses, average age at a certain age. In order to do that, we replace accordingly. And so we have an obsolescence model that ensure that our fleet is at what we call the industry standard as we move forward. Must be someone who doesn't know I'm working. So that's something that we want to do. So again, last year we purchased 19 buses. As a result, this year we're looking at purchasing 21 buses. So right in that ballpark of we move forward. So that's proposition 2 on the referendum. Proposition 3 is something that we initially thought about doing in October. However, when we think about the voting landscape in October, we'll have a primary in September. The library typically have their vote in October. We have a national elections in November. And what our fear was, we didn't want to get caught into the voter fatigue piece of it, and people not quite frankly coming out. And plus, we have heard over the years that people saying, why did you guys have a budget vote in May and now you're having this other thing in the fall? And we don't want to have perception lend to a negative outlook of something that we think is very positive, not only certainly for the school, but also for the community in terms of our investment in the infrastructure of the community. So we've been working very hard with our architects and other folks to shift the timeline. And so typically what the timeline do is we do a lot of prep work and then we have vote. This is our complete opposite. We vote and then we do the fine-tune prep work. So we have general scope defined in terms of what we want to do, but when I say the fine-tune, it's the architecture, design, and specifications that will happen in the summer as a part of it. We'll talk about the timeline in a second. So what we're looking to do, really focus on the 5-year facilities plan. It's going to be the bulk of the budget proposal, and then some enhancements as we move forward. To put this in context, the board has seen this. This is part of a larger plan. We want to get into a cycle, if you will, of investing and reinvesting in our facilities, and not have a situation where we wait 10, 15 years and we have to invest $90 million, $100 million into which quite frankly, while people might be supportive of it, it's not the best use of dollars because you're delaying something that's going to cost you a lot more in the future versus trying to address things over time. So it's a part of a larger referendum plan that we have in place that hopefully we can execute between now and 2030, and beyond that point it would be reevaluated again. So let's put it in context. This referendum we're looking at about $16.6 million. In the conversation we had at the board, we had a general $17 million figure. A good portion of that it's important for the community to understand that for every dollar we spend, we get 67.7 cents back, almost 68 cents back. So it's pretty significant. So if the $16 million referendum, about 14.5 of it is reimbursed through the building aid process. So when we look at the local impact is over the course of it is about less than 0.5% impact over the year, or about $22 on the average for what we call the average taxpayers over the year. So when you look at that socialized across, it's very minimal impact. However, we also know, and something that is hard for us to cost out now, we also know that we have maturing debt. So when you think about from a budget piece, what taxpayers are taxed on is based upon what we budget. And if our debt is doing this, we are therefore not taxing taxpayers the equivalent amount because we have maturing debt. And so we're trying to ensure, again, back to Mr. Trainer's question about the health insurance, that we have a flat line projection. So the impact on taxpayers, to be quite frank with you, in some cases, we're going to be spending less on debt service, even with new projects on, than we were paying in prior years. So that's a part of the timing sequence that make this project pretty important for us. And that's also why that the whole timeline of the next 15 years become important, because we want to be able to bring projects on board and having, again, a minimal or no impact on the overall budget, which means minimal or no impact on local taxpayers as a result of those projects coming online. So that's very important for us as we move forward. So the components of this kind of give you some perspective of what I'm talking about right now. This bottom line is where our debt service is going. And this is 2016 all the way to 2034. And this top line is that if with this one new project, this is how it shifts the debt service line just very slightly. Ideally, we want the debt service line to be something like this going across with the new projects coming on board. And so this kind of gives you an indication that with this proposed capital project 2016, just a slight variation or shift in what the debt service trajectory is. And so this is probably the best picture to put that into perspective. The components of the project, as I mentioned before, a lot of it is going to address what we call high priority areas from the facilities, priority 1 and priority 2 items. So roughly about 10 million of the 17, or close to 17, 16.6 will go towards those things because those were the big infrastructure needs. And we're talking about everything from replacing water pipes to looking at more efficient windows and things of that nature. So things that every household has to deal with, we just have to deal with it in 100 folds. And so looking at those type things as we move forward. A pretty neat project piece of it that we want to look at is focus on the high school library and looking at everything from the efficiency of the layout to the lighting of the high school library. Again, creating a very vibrant place that speaks to our commitment to academics, a place where we know many students congregate in, assemble in, study in, and all the time. So we want to create that vibrant place for the high school library. Dr. Wood is spearheading this piece of the initiative. District-wide signage, we had this conversation before, and certainly this is a busy place, busy campus, and so we want to look at signage, not only external signage, but signage within buildings. And I always laugh that when I tell people that we have a board meeting in the Gowanus Library, I always have to remind them they will never see the Gowanus sign if they're driving on the road, because you can't see it from the roadway between the parking lot between. And so if you're not familiar with it, you would never find Gowanus. So I always have to tell them, when you see the buses, that parking lot, it's that building. And it's kind of an awkward description. How do we get away from that? By having appropriate signage. How, when we get into the building, when you walk into the building, you're not saying, is the library straight down this hallway, or is the library there? So internal signage become important. And so those are kind of efficiency things that we want to do with the signage project as we move forward. And another neat piece of this, too, is that every year, and kudos and appreciation to PTA and to others who have fundraised to create great outdoor learning spaces. Some people call them playgrounds for our students. And so how do we look to enhance some of that through the capital project as well? So this project goes from necessity to great enhancements. And we really want to have that diversity within the project as we move forward. So this referendum is that, and this is the timeline to give the board some sense of time. The assumption that this goes to the voters on May 17th. A lot of work is already taking place right now. We have committees meeting right now. We continue to fine-tune the specs in June and August with the goal of submitting to the State Education Department in September, October. Reason why that becomes important, say it this way, even if we were doing an October referendum, we would still be looking to try to do some September and October, because if we miss that window, we out another year because of the approval process from the state. And so that becomes a big piece from us, trying to get approval, and hopefully by next spring we'll have bids, and by next summer we'll have some construction taking place. To what degree, this depends on the process. So that's the timeline for the construction piece.
From our experience, the last time we did this, it seems like state ed sort of a bottleneck with everybody else putting in their building plans. And do you feel comfortable that's not going to happen this time?
I feel more comfortable. Say it this way. The reason why just recently the State Education Department, I guess, contracted with other architectural firms across the state to help with their review process. For whatever reason, the State Division of Budget is not allowing the department to actually hire architects and engineers on staff, but they have the dollars to contract, which, I don't think it's the best situation, but it is what it is. So as a result of that, they anticipate that the timeline for review should be shorter. To what extent, we'll see. And that's the reason why the timing for us becomes so important, and also the types of project that we put in when. Different projects require different level of review, and so we're going to try to maximize that process in the same way as well. So that was the third proposition. The fourth proposition is something that we're looking to establish a capital reserve. And again, the whole purpose of this is how do we try to minimize the impact on taxpayers as we move forward? How do we look at planning forward? And it's no different, again, as someone who's a household, and you're saying, you know what, we want to do this in the future. Well, we're not going to wake up in the future and say, let's do it. We're going to plan for it. So we're going to start saving a little bit here, a little bit there. So we're trying to offset that cost of whatever that thing is in the future. So going back to the capital project timeline, as we look at the local share, at the state aid piece and the local share, we figure, how do we create a reserve? So over time, we can then offset that local share and having, again, a minimal to no impact on the taxpayers as we move forward with the capital project. So that's the thing that we're doing with the reserve. The beauty of the reserve, is, or should I say the restriction of the reserve, is also the beauty of the reserve. The reserve has to be voter approved. So subsequently tonight, the board is going to be asked to have a separate action to create that reserve. And then it'll be also in the legal notice. So if you see the sequence of action, one thing has to occur. And then it has to be approved by the voters on the 17th to establish it and to establish the amount that we could accumulate over time. And once we start to use that reserve, it also then has to be approved by the voters. And so that's important because it's designed to have a positive impact on our ability to put forth referendum and have capital projects in place, and the voters have a say directly in that process all the time. So our projection is we have a timeline of a capital project timeline of about 15 years. This goes about 20 because, again, timing of things may not necessarily happen in the same way. So we want to make sure that we at least go beyond our 15-year projection of capital projects. So it's a 20-year projection, looking at a maximum of $12 million. Will we be able to have a reserve of $12 million? I don't know in 20 years. But we want to have that capacity. And the reason why we look at that number, because we say, okay, we look at a typical local share of what we are projecting out for projects, it should be around that amount. So if we could try to have the reserve to negate that local tax impact, that's exactly what we want to try to do over the course of the next 15 years. But again, the key of it, the voters has to vote to approve this, as well as the parameters that you see here. And then once we start expending portions of it, the voters have to approve to expend those portions for those specific purposes.
Question on the second statement there. Can you explain that to me?
On whole and part here, this piece of it.
Are we talking about the spin-off from the capital reserve fund paying interest on the bonds?
It could do a couple things. It could do that. So for instance, so when we bond, that means we're borrowing money that eventually somebody has to pay for. So instead of borrowing a certain amount of money, we can use the reserve to avoid borrowing money, which is a burden on taxpayers. So it could be used for a portion of that. So for instance, when we do a project, we do band anticipation notes. Because so for instance, if we approve a $16.6 million budget, we don't go out and borrow $16.6 million. We go out and say, okay, if the first project was $1 million, we do bands for that $1 million portion of it. Because what we don't want to do is borrow money unnecessarily and have to pay interest over time on it. And plus, we have to also think about the reimbursement sequence of when state aid is coming back to make sure that those things align as well. So when we look at that piece of it, it creates opportunities to say, hey, you know what? Instead of borrowing this money, we can use this to offset X, Y, and Z. It creates, again, a reduced cost to taxpayers. So it gives us an opportunity to do that if we, it doesn't say we have to do that, but we have the option of doing that.
Right, but I think what's confusing me is when we talk about the cost of bonds, to me, the cost of a bond is the interest.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the administrative cost of the bond. It's cost in terms, what the bond costs us from borrowing it, the interest piece of it, yes.
Okay. We're not looking at reducing the principal amount that we'd have to borrow.
It's avoiding, quite frankly, the exposure of even having to pay interest in some cases, or paying a portion of it, which could be the interest portion of that piece of it. Okay. It's one of those things, and I appreciate you asking this question, Mr. Trainer, being an attorney, because it's one of those languages that I'm sure some attorney wrote, and it was fanciful, it was nice, and it ended up in law. So what you see here is actually the stipulations that the state comptroller's office say capital reserve can, in fact, do these things. So the first bullets you see here actually right down to, we have to even define the term and the maximum funding, or right from that definition, the restrictions of what a capital reserve fund can do. But you're right, if I were to restate that, I would say, how do we offset whatever those expenditure exposures are? It's probably more complicated than cost of bonds.
See, and I was going to credit you for what I think is an ingenious idea, and that is taking the spin-off from the capital reserve fund to pay the interest on the bonds.
I think it's part of the intention, but I can't take credit for the words. So I appreciate that question, that clarification. This is always one of the difficult ones because we're not asking voters to go out and borrow $12 million. We're asking voters to create a reserve fund that, if opportunity comes, to fund it over the course of 20 years for a very defined purpose. So it's always a more difficult one to explain. And so that's the fourth proposition. The fifth proposition, and the last one that we'll have a conversation tonight, is the Board of Education seats. As we know, we have 3 seats up. Mr. Trainer announced that he wasn't running, so we know that minimally we have at least 1 new board member coming on board. So three seats for 3-year terms, and that's important because in the past year we had some 2-year terms and some things because of the timing of when people left the board. The petitions are due on the 18th. I had to clarify that because I made a mistake in one of my correspondence. It was 20th on the 18th by 5 for those petitions are due for the candidates' petitions. 68 signature required. So we'll see on 18th who actually returned the completed signature petitions, and subsequently who will be on the ballot for the budget vote in May. So again, one of the things I always want to kind of emphasize is while we went through a lot of numbers tonight, at the end of the day, the numbers are important, but the more important thing is what services are we providing to our students, and subsequently, how do we enrich in our community as a whole, from a quality education experience. And the last piece, just want to highlight, this is, again, the 5 pieces that we have. This is the election process. The vote is on the 17th. The criteria to who can vote, the polls, as I said, we'll be putting out information about the electronic voting to make sure people understand that it's a different process for us. In the past, we controlled, in other words, the board used to approve all those election inspectors. This time, we have to actually get those from the county. There's going to be another set of dynamics for us in terms of who are these people and those type things. So we got to, it's a new process for us as we go through. So this is pretty much what I have for tonight.
So how about any questions or comments from the board? Yeah.
I'm certainly in agreement and supportive of moving the capital, referendum to the May vote, because I think it just makes sense, and again, for the reasons that you stated. My only concern, I don't even say concern, but is that we do our due diligence in making sure we get out there and really explain this to voters. I think there's a lot on the plate for the voters when you're looking at 5, different propositions, and making sure we're very clear on each one, that none of them get diluted in their significance, but also with the new voting machines too. I think that might throw a challenge too. I know it sounds really trivia, but I know people really, they miss something on it, and I didn't do this, I didn't do that, but I think we have to do our due diligence. And I know you do when you go out, and Kathy as well, but I think we have so much more invested in this that we have to make sure that we do our due diligence, that's all.
Thank you.
It just seems like the way the economy is, we're coming through a period for several years where very low interest rates. It's great time to refinance, okay, but you're also seeing things that may end, not right away, but we're seeing the actions of the Federal Reserve kind of going back to the way it was 15, 20 years ago, people paying 4 or 5% or higher. So now I think it's the right time to have the flexibility to pay it down quicker, because that ramp is going to start coming up. And so I think what you got here is something that allows us to do that. And we typically have done that with a lot of the refinancing that goes on a year-to-year basis. And so I think our track record has been, we're pretty good at managing this as best as we can. So maybe that's part of what we want to communicate to the community, is that this gives us the opportunity to take advantage. And then when we do that, often that state money that we're bringing into the picture also comes forward. So we're getting it. It's almost like we're pulling as many levers as possible to get the most out of what we're asking the taxpayer to bring forward.
Thank you.
Mary?
It's not a question, but I just really have to say thank you to accelerating this timeline, coming off the heels of yet another audit, and just the regular end of year and all the transitions that we normally undertake, to take on an accelerated timeline for this resolution for the capital project. I just really appreciate, and Kathy in particular, and your staff. It's no small task, and I realize that it's no small task. And I do understand that we might be just a little bit ahead of the information that we need to have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and that's okay, and it is absolutely okay. Just to go skeletal until we can get it all in, because I know it's a big deal, and I just really appreciate that.
Thank you. Good. Any other comments? Sheridan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sharon? No?
Just the budget, back to what we're planning to spend. I think I mentioned last time we talked about this is just the sage use of money, but also what you have in this budget is the ability to line ourselves up to one of the things that you pointed out from the education world. Somewhere around 2020 or 2022, that's when we're going to have much higher standards for our students, and we see a big crunch occurring, because the students that typically have barely passed the reading exam are the ones that are going to really suffer, because we may wake up with kids in those classes being told, hey, you're not ready, according to how our new test standards have developed. Well, you've got things in here that I think are going to ramp up. I think also in a year, we'll have more time, probably a year or two, for deeper thinking on how effective our 3 through 8 new math book, new English language arts book are paying off, okay? I think it's all sort of coming together. You've got something that we've lined up with the teaching coaches, new curriculum, new books, new standards, and I think you have things in here where you're bridging these 9 to 10 grade kids. So I think that's all kind of lining up where you're going to wake up a year or two from now going, this is all sort of making sense, that we are getting those kids who in the past barely passed the Regents exam. With the new standards, they're going to be bumped up because of these things that have come forward. So I think it's important we point out that you don't see it now, but a year or two from now, you'll be very happy that you've done this. And I don't think other school districts are lining things like this up.
No, I'm sorry, Sheridan.
When we were talking about Regents review for all Regents exams, are those the books or
Well,
programs?
we talking about, their case was the Regents review books. However, one of the things they have here is, I'm not sure if you're referring to this particular one, we have Regents review for exams in the summer. So this is basically any Regents exam that's offered in the summer, we want to create some Regents review opportunities for kids to either retake because they failed, or in some cases, take because you want to have a higher score. And back to Mr. Press's point, you're right, most places, unfortunately because of circumstances, cannot even have this conversation. And we're fortunate through good planning and good circumstances otherwise that we could actually have those conversations. And literally, that's why I use the analogy of really trying to round off those rugged, sharp edges in our system and looking at those situations and say, for a young person who failed or barely passed the exam and want to say, God, I know if I do it over, I'll do better. We want to say, okay, not only are you going to do it over, but we're going to try to help you in the process. And so we hope that this particular line keep growing, not because we have increased failure, but it's growing because we have increased number of kids that want to take advantage of the opportunity. Because there's always room for growth and improvement, and we want to be able to provide those opportunities. Similar with the Regents review books and courses, try to have those things much more readily available for students during the school year becomes a big part of that experience as well.
Thank you.
Okay. We did have on the agenda that we would open this up for public comment or question. If anybody has any, Deanna, you may be the owner. You have any questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Just one comment before I sit down, and I'll probably say it again, but I think it's important because of the types of questions that the board asks. While I'm standing here explaining it to the board, and yes, been intimately involved in the process, we have a lot of high-quality folks invested in this process. From Augie Freeman on the construction side, and Ken Patton and Jay on the operational facility side, to you saw Chris Conan tonight on the athletic side, to Jill and Kathy and Kelly and Becky and Michelle and you name it, across the board, people who are invested in making sure that we expend funds in a way that's efficient and effective. And sometimes those conversations are hard because sometimes it's telling people, no, we're not going to do that, or we're not going to do it that way anymore. And it's when you do that, sometimes you walk out of the room knowing that everyone hates you, but I call it like giving your kid medicine. You hold their nose and force them to take it, and the next day they feel better. They're not going to come and say, Mom and Dad, thank you. They just run along down their busy way as if, hey, you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to take care of me. And so I say that because oftentimes when we go through the budget process, it's a lot of crucial conversations we're having, and sometimes people don't appreciate, back to Mr. Press's piece, don't appreciate what's the long-term implication of some of these things, and we always have to think forward. I tell people, I don't live today. I'm 10 years out in our system, which is sometimes difficult because I'm thinking everyone else is there too, but they're 10 years back thinking about what was while we're thinking about what is and should be. And so I really appreciate the feedback from the board tonight and the confirming comments from the board, because it's truly a very extensive process that forced us to look at our entire system as a system. Look at all the pieces, but look at it as a system. So I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what you were saying, just in terms of understanding and appreciating, giving the board's appreciation for the amount of work that goes in this. I mean, when people talk to us about what do you guys do on the board, we talk about we're a policy-making board. My own statement always is that we go through the policy book, and that's important, what we do. That sets the guidelines for how this district operates, sets the rules more than guidelines. But the two biggest policy statements that we make are the hiring and the tracking of the superintendent, and the budget. The annual budget is a policy statement and this budget, I think, is consistent with the budgets that we've presented in the last several years that put students first, that look at how we can, with a number of goals. you talk over and over again about trying to keep that flat line, predictability, consistency, not only on the numbers, but on the delivery of the service, and look at where we can press ourselves to make some strategic decisions going down the road. We think this will have an impact. So one-on-one instruments at sixth grade level. That's okay. Is that going to absolutely do that? We think it's the right thing to do, and our policy is we're going to move forward on that. The policy is that it's in our budget. So just accolades to everyone, because as you mentioned, we get 1 month into the school year, and we're working on next year's budget. Meantime, we've got 9,700 students within the school, plus the outside, that we need to pay attention to deliver the service. And when we hear things about student athletes and the fact, how many years in a row we've got this milestone, it takes a lot of work to do this. And this, at times, I suspect, when you say the push and push back, sometimes you say, I don't want to do it anymore. So thank you on behalf of the board, and thank you to the staff for doing this. I should have mentioned tonight, as we opened, and I was aware of the absence of saying the right thing when, as we referred to the last resolution, the board members, 2 of our board members are not here tonight. Todd Gilbert is out of town on business, long-term schedule, as is Gary DeLallo, both of whom are up for re-election this year, and put a lot of time into the process. Gary especially focused on what's going on at the state level and with the School Boards Association, very much in the thick of the lobbying and trying to get the truth, at least from our perspective, to the folks who are making the decision. So we really appreciate that. And finally, I do want to thank Jim for being here tonight. A couple coaches referred to struggles and difficulties in their own personal life while they're in the middle of things. Jim's dad passed away in the last 2 weeks, and Jim, we really appreciate the fact you're here. And as I was saying to you earlier tonight, reading that obituary, we know who the leader in your family was and what a model that was. So we just we share our condolences.
Comment?
Yeah, sure.
I know it's not open comment, but I just wanted to thank the district as a whole and many individuals for the condolences and support that you gave our family over the last week or two. If you read the obituary, you noticed that my dad was the first high school graduate in his family, and education meant an awful lot to him. And so it means a lot to me as a result.
Yeah. When I talked to your mother in line over at St. Edward's, and I said, we've met before, she said, yes, at the school board forum when you and I were both meeting. She remembered that. That's important to your family. So we share in your grief, Jim, but thank you for being here, and thank you for your commitment. So we'll move on with our agenda. We have some action items tonight, mostly related to what we talked about tonight. The first item is the State Environmental Quality Review Act adoption of the, we need to make a statement of what kind of finding this is. The recommendation is a resolution of no significant environmental impact. This project, the overall project's been reviewed by the architects and by the staff, and they recommend that we pass this resolution. It's a requirement along the way that we do make an acknowledgement or make a resolution as it relates to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. There are times when you do a project where there is a finding of significant review that slows you down, but also I think as we're doing projects that are maintaining facilities, upgrading them in the way that we're talking about, I think we can make a fair statement that this has no significant environmental impact. So if I could have a motion that we would adopt the resolution on this being a type 2 action. Mary, second. Jim, any questions or additional comments? All those in favor? So we adopt that resolution. The next resolution we have is to deal with the establishment of the Capital Reserve Fund. Dr. Robinson went through that. In terms of our use, we need, in terms of, and complying with the law, we need to adopt a resolution adopting that. for 2016 Building Capital Reserve Fund, and that will move this so that it can be on our, on the ballot in May. Could I have a motion? Yes, Christina? Bob? Any questions or comments on that?
Yes, comment. I think this is a great step and shows a lot of leadership at the district level, the board level, to future generations. We're paying it forward, if you will, by establishing what I feel is a very responsible budget item and fund for future use. So I'm fully in support of this.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. The next requirement we have is to adopt the language of formal notice of the propositions. That was in our packet, which includes the 5 resolutions that Dr. Robinson just went through. And we have a requirement that we do this 45 days in advance of the actual vote. Could I have a motion to adopt the language of that? Bob, second. Jim? Any questions or comments? Mary?
I just want to point out that in the proposition for the budget, we're not required to have the dollar amount in there, and we do not have the dollar amount in there right now, but we do in the other, okay. So when we get the dollar amount from the state, we'll know.
Fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank, right.
All those in favor? Motion carries. And last on the action items is approval of the modified 2016-2017 school calendar. Well, let's have a motion, and then we'll see if there's any comments. A motion on that? Jim? Second? Bob? Any questions or comments? Becky, you want to say anything? No questions or comments? You don't need to say anything. All those in favor? Motion carries. Right before we adjourn, I do want to point out that our next meeting where we will adopt the budget, and there will be public comment, is on Tuesday, April 5th. And from that, we also have requirements. We have a BOCES vote on the second meeting in April, on April 19th, and we'll be coming up with a budget hearing, which will coincide with our first meeting in May, on May 10th. At that point, it's hard to have a budget hearing when the budget's already printed and moving forward. So we encourage people as we get to this next meeting, if they have specific comments, there are many ways they can contact us, and we encourage them to do that and make their suggestions. That being said, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Mary, second. Jim? All those in favor? Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Yeah, we made it before 9.
So thank you.